Welcome to the 2025 Round 1 playoff predictions from the official basketball plug. I'm not going to get too into depth with each game so far for this Round 1. I'm going to save it later for more in-depth videos when I actually do game analysis and breakdown footage. We're going to keep things simple for now. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Hit your comments below if you agree with my predictions. If you disagree, your thoughts and opinions. All right, we're going to get into this right now.
I still like the Rockets in that series.
Do you?
I do.
Listen to some of these scores in that season series. 127-121 in overtime, 99-93, 91-90, 105-98, and the biggest margin was 10, 106-96 for
Golden State over Houston.
What about you? It's hard for me to go against the Rockets.
Oh, I love the Rockets.
However, with Jimmy Butler, they're not playing like a 7 seed. They're playing like a 3 seed.
A team that had the second best record in the Western Conference after the All-Star.
So obviously we're starting out with the Warriors versus Rockets series. You just got to hear what Inside the NBA had to say. I like Shaq's comment about the Warriors having more experience, and especially what Kenny the Jet Smith had to say when he went on to explain that the Warriors are not really a 7th seed, but more like a 3rd one because of the addition with Jimmy Butler. And if we look at those 2 games that Jimmy Butler played in when he eventually got to the Golden State Warriors, the Warriors won one of those games, though for the Rockets, they were missing their point guard, Fred VanVleet. And in the second game, the Rockets won. Fred VanVleet got to play, but Steph Curry had 3 points in that game. When's the last time you heard something like that happen? Steph Curry literally only scored 1 3-point field goal, basically. So that's not going to happen again. Jimmy Butler only had 13 points in that game as well. I will give credit to the Houston Rockets. They are a very good defensive team. They finished 6th this season in opponents' field goal percentage as well as opponents' points allowed. They can lock you down. I just don't see them locking down both Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry at the same time. If anything, one of them may have a mediocre game and the other one plays really good. You got to pick your poison in that situation. But where I'm really worried about if I'm the Rockets is who's going to score for you. Because I believe Draymond Green could give fits to Alperen Sengun. That's going to be a very interesting matchup. And then outside of that, who else is going to step up? I look at Jalen Green. I think he's a little bit too inconsistent and erratic in terms of being like a volume shooter. Fred VanVleet is kind of the same way on offense to me. They got to jack up a lot of shots really to score, and the field goal percentage is not particularly good when they do that. Then on top of that, Fred VanVleet got a championship. All right, Dylan Brooks got some playoff experience. Outside of that, there's not much postseason success when it comes to the other players. This is a young up-and-coming team with the Houston Rockets. I believe they will lose to the Warriors, and the Warriors get this in 6. The Lakers versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. Let me say this. When the Timberwolves versus the Dallas Mavericks last year in the West Finals, I had the Timberwolves winning because that team was one of the best defensive teams in the NBA last year. There was people comparing it to like the 90s Chicago Bulls defensively on that end. And when I looked at the Mavericks, I said Kyrie Irving, Luka Doncic, that's a crazy combination, but it's a little bit top heavy. The roster, the rest of it looks thin. The Timberwolves are in a familiar position. They're facing another Lakers team where people were saying the same things after the Luka Doncic trade. Yeah, Luka and LeBron, that's a crazy combination, but what about the rest of the roster? They weren't able to get the trade to get Mark Williams. Well, I'm here to tell you, I think this is going to work in the Lakers' favor this year too, now that they got the Timberwolves. Anybody that Rudy Gobert is guarding, that player on the Lakers is going to set a pick for either Luka Doncic, LeBron James, or even Austin Reeves, and they're just going to go ISO and score a lot of points that way. The Timberwolves, if they have any shot, they're going to have to take Rudy out of the lineup, go small, Naz Reid at the 5, Julius Randle at the 4. Maybe then we got a whole different series. If not, I'm just going to go on a limb and say that the Lakers are going to take this in 6. The Clippers versus the Nuggets. This one is the biggest question mark. What if? There's so much hypotheticals that can happen. Let me start off with Kawhi Leonard. He's looking really, really healthy. He played 47 minutes the last game of this regular season, but I'm not sure if that's going to last. I don't know. With Kawhi, he gets injured and then he looks healthy again. So there's that. Then I'm looking at the Denver Nuggets. Jamal Murray, I think he's dealing with some injuries himself, or he's at least playing through it. We'll see how that goes. Going back to the Clippers, though, when I look at Zubac and Norman Powell, they had a standout regular season. Nobody saw those 2 guys stepping up the way that they did, which is making me wonder, could they replicate that in the playoffs? Normally, when you have players who are not stars, but they look like that in the regular season, when the playoffs happen and the opposing team has more time to put a defense against your team, those guys tend to struggle a little bit more. So I'm going to be looking out for that in the playoffs. Here's my main concern, which leans against the Denver Nuggets. You fired your head coach, Mike Malone, somebody that was there for several years. You got a championship with him. You now have a new coach. That's going to take some time to readjust to what that coach's philosophies, his game plan, his strategic outlook. You can't just do that on the fly, especially heading into the playoffs. And then you're hearing rumblings about Russell Westbrook. Players didn't like the way that Westbrook has been treated, and now this new coach seems to be favoring the younger players, stuff like that. It just seems like there may be also underlying issues with chemistry that's going on. This is why I'm going to pick the Clippers in 6. The Memphis Grizzlies versus the OKC Thunder. Doesn't seem like it was too long ago when Memphis was actually second in the West, right behind OKC. But because the West is so competitive, you lose a few games here and there. All of a sudden, now you find yourself in a play-in tournament. And one of the things that really stand out to me about the series is the fact that OKC is a super defensive team versus one that has been struggling on that end. They got Jaren Jackson, Desmond Bane. They have the potential to really play good defense. We haven't seen that consistently this year. Then on top of that, OKC has a bunch of perimeter defenders that can handle, in my opinion, somebody like Ja Morant, who's on the smaller side, though he is very explosive. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, Alex Caruso, Lou Dort. I think this is going to be really, really tough for Ja Morant. I'm interested to see how well he's going to play in this kind of series. Another reason why I'm skeptical over the chances of the Memphis Grizzlies beating the Thunder is they just fired their head coach and got a new one. Look, I got OKC in 6. We'll see what's going to happen. The Milwaukee Bucks versus the Indiana Pacers. This one is going to be very interesting. Damian Lillard is injured. If he was healthy, I would have outright picked the Bucks to win this series. Now when we look at it, the Indiana Pacers have high octane offense. Like, this team could really score. However, they're not really a good defensive team. The Milwaukee Bucks can play decent defense. They're top 5 to top 10 in opponents' field goal percentage and points allowed. They're not too bad either, just above the middle pack. I'm looking at it like if Milwaukee Bucks could get excellent games out of guys like Kevin Porter, which I believe he could do, Gary Trent, who was a bucket, then obviously Kyle Kuzma would be the biggest guy they would really have to depend on to step up and replace what Damian Lillard does. And Kyle Kuzma has showed in the past, at least when on a team that's not good, he could look like a star player or put up star numbers. Now you're playing with Giannis Antetokounmpo, who the defense is going to focus on a lot. Is going to give him room to be that guy once again in some ways. Then you got Bobby Portis, who could give you a solid double-double. I think he may match up well against Pascal Siakam. That's one that I'm going to really watch out for in terms of who they're going to put on a guy like Siakam. Even Pat Connaughton, he had a 40-point ball just recently towards the end of the season. Basically, what I'm saying is I don't expect Pacers to play good defense. So if the Milwaukee Bucks continue to do what they've been doing as of recently with their own defense, I'm looking at it like, okay, who's going to stop Giannis Antetokounmpo, the best player in the series? And then on the flip side, if the Pacers even struggle a bit on offense, who's going to really step up and be that guy? Because there's no one on the Pacers side that could do what Giannis is going to do when it comes to just 30 and even 40-point games. With that being said, it'll still be a tough series in my opinion. I'm going to go with the Milwaukee Bucks in 7. The Knicks versus Pistons. This is going to be my favorite matchup in the East for the first round. I like the Knicks team with the roster on paper better than I do the Pistons. I just think 1 through 5 and even the bench, at the very least, the Knicks got a bunch of defenders. Marjon Beauchamp, OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, Mitchell Robinson. Then there's PJ Tucker. The reason why I'm mentioning all these names is because outside of Cade Cunningham, if somebody on the Pistons can't score, I think it's going to be a nightmare for them offensively going up against the New York Knicks. And I will say, though, that in the season series, the Pistons beat the Knicks 3 out of 4 games. Now, one of those games, Karl Anthony Towns wasn't playing. However, when we look at the regular season versus a playoff matchup, you're not traveling from one city and then you got to go to another one to play a back-to-back. You have a full, at least week or so, whatever the time frame is, to scout one team, only think about this one squad and what you're going to do for at least 4 games. With that being said, if I am the Knicks, I would be a little bit worried going back to that regular season series that they had. They got big games out of Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns. It's not like they didn't show up. They had some bad games, and you could say, that's not going to happen again. Jalen Brunson scored really 30 points every single time they played up until the last matchup where he was just coming off of injury, still trying to get his stride back. Cat was doing what he normally does outside of the game that I mentioned he missed. All I'm trying to explain is it's going to be a tough series either way. I'm still going to go with the New York Knicks in 7 despite that season series that I'm talking about. The Boston Celtics versus the Orlando Magic. This is going to be another, in my opinion, rough series, maybe similar to the Knicks versus Pistons. But maybe this one will be even more of that kind of element, since these are the top two defensive teams when it comes to opponents' points allowed going up against each other. And the Orlando Magic, they're not a 500 team to me. They dealt with the injuries with Paulo Banchero, Franz Wagner, their top guys who could score the ball, 25 points approximately, a few rebounds, a few assists. If they were fully healthy and in stride, Jalen Suggs is injured as well, man, I could see this really going to 7. I think they could push the Boston Celtics. But because they're still coming off injuries with their main players and another one of their role players, Jalen Suggs, is missing, I'm going to say that the Celtics win in 6. However, I do think this is going to be a series worth watching. The Cleveland Cavaliers versus the Miami Heat. Let me start off with this. Just like how I don't look at the Golden State Warriors as a 7th seed, I don't necessarily look at Miami Heat as a 10th seed. I don't think they will be at the top of the East. But with everything that played out with the Miami Heat going on a 10-game losing streak, the turmoil with Jimmy Butler, all of that I think affected them where they ended up in this position, and now they're the first 10th seed to actually make the playoffs from the play-in. That already tells you a lot about their mentality. So I guess what I'm saying is this is not going to be an easy series for the Cleveland Cavaliers. And one of the things I noticed about the Cavs when I watched their games, I believe they struggle a bit when they got to guard a really good player who's out on the perimeter that could dribble and shoot. Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland seem to struggle when it comes to containing high offensive players on the perimeter. As a result, it puts more pressure on Jared Allen and Evan Mobley to help and try to make up for it. Look for Tyler Hero to have a huge series. With all that being said, I'm still picking Cleveland to win. I'm going to say Cavs in 7, but if there is an upset that's going to happen, it could be this one. I wouldn't be surprised, but we'll see. This is where I'm going to end things off. Y'all let me know in the comment section what you believe about my predictions, your own predictions as how this playoffs will eventually turn out. This is obviously just round 1, and as I was saying at the very beginning of the video, I'm going to do more videos where you got game footage and go into more analysis. We're just going to keep it easy for now. This is when round 2 goes on, the conference finals, etc. All right, like, share, and subscribe, and as always, salute for listening. Peace.